The third time will not be the charm for Mitt Romney. The GOP's 2012 nominee and this year's early frontrunner says he will not run in 2016. This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. Welcome to Washington. We begin tonight with the first big surprise of the 2016 campaign. Mitt Romney, who was way out in front of the GOP field in last night's Fox News poll, shocked a lot of people today when he said thanks, but no thanks. It's a decision that creates an even more Wild West feel to a GOP presidential free-for-all. We have Fox team coverage tonight. James Rosen measures the shockwaves this earthquake sent through the rest of the field. But we begin with chief political correspondent Carl Cameron on Romney's announcement. Good evening, Carl.
Hi, Brett. We are 3 weeks exactly to the day after Mitt Romney said he was seriously considering a third presidential run. Well, he held a national press conference call with his supporters today and pulled the plug.
It's critical that America elect a conservative leader to become our next president. You know that I wanted to be that president, but I do not want to make it more difficult for someone else to emerge who may have a better chance of becoming that president.
Romney said he could raise the money, but many former donors wouldn't commit, or already were, to others. Romney said he was heartened by encouraging calls, but the conservative grassroots showed little interest. It was obvious at a GOP candidate forum in Iowa last weekend. Romney wasn't there, wasn't missed, and his team saw firsthand what little Romney buzz existed was negative. Then 2 nights ago, he joked about his wealth and things he was not looking forward to on the trail.
I don't miss the adoring press. I don't miss over 300 nights a year in a motel room. I'm not even thinking about getting rich from the speaking fees after I leave office. As you no doubt heard, I'm already rich. I'm thinking about how I could help the country.
Not only was he leading GOP polls, he was the only one tied with Hillary Clinton in the latest Fox News survey. Even President Obama took notice of Romney's potential return last night, reprising the 2012 attacks painting Romney as an out-of-touch rich guy.
We've got a former presidential candidate on the other side who suddenly is just deeply concerned about poverty. That's great. Let's go. Come on, let's do something about it. I am glad that the rhetoric at least has shifted. So let's now make sure that the policies match up with the rhetoric.
Romney's response made it look like game on last night. Mr. Obama, wonder why my concern about poverty? The record number of poor in your term and your record of failure to remedy. This morning, Romney bailed out with a nod to newcomers.
I believe that one of our next generation of Republican leaders, one who may not be as well known as I am today, one who has not yet taken their message across the country, one who's just getting started, may well emerge as being better able to defeat the Democrat nominee.
To many, that amounted to a shot at Jeb Bush, who was governor of Florida more than a decade ago, and Chris Christie, the two-term New Jersey governor and former chairman of the Republican Governors Association. Romney's having dinner with Christie tonight. He met with Bush just last week, and now he's out. And so begins the scramble among the rest of the field for what's left over of his donors and supporters, Brett.
We shall see. Carl, thank you. Today, I interviewed Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker for our Possible Presidential Contenders series. His will actually air next week. But during that interview, Walker had to pause to take a call from Mitt Romney. I wasn't in on that private conversation, but before the call, Walker praised Romney and then pointed to one line in Romney's exit statement.
Governor Romney's a good man, would have been a good president. I appreciate the fact that in his comments he pointed out that it was maybe time to pass the torch and look for new leadership, and I agree with him.
You saw that line as pointing to somebody like you?
Certainly I don't think he's endorsed. I'd love to have his endorsement, but I don't know that he's saying about anyone in particular. But I think it is a time for new, fresh ideas that are going to take on Washington.
But it changes the GOP picture.
Oh, no doubt about it. I think you're right about that. I think it's one of those where initially, at least when he made his comments, it kind of froze things up for a number of people. I think now that he's made it official, he's not running, there's a whole number of prospective candidates who are going to be out eagerly trying to get people who are on his team.
Well, for the 10 or more Republicans left angling for their party's presidential nomination, Romney's withdrawal creates a host of opportunities as they scramble to lock up the former nominee's donors, staffers, and supporters. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen has that part of the story tonight.
Governor Jeb Bush. From former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, the prospective Republican candidate widely presumed to benefit most directly from Mitt Romney's withdrawal from the 2016 field, came an almost immediate Facebook post saying, "Mitt is a patriot, and I join many in hoping his days of serving our nation and our party are not over."
Jeb Bush was certainly helped by Romney's decision. It takes his main rival in the establishment tier of the nominating battle out of the race. Now he still has to worry about Chris Christie and Scott Walker, even Marco Rubio. You know, we're starting to see that he isn't as much under Jeb Bush's shadow as we thought.
Indeed, the latest Fox News poll of registered Republican voters finds Romney supporters largely up for grabs, with Bush, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, and Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky mired in the mid-teens.
And what that tells me is that Republicans are very much, they're not thrilled with establishment candidates right now. They're not thrilled with the establishment, and it's a great opportunity for a governor, perhaps a governor we're not even thinking of right now, to step in and take control of this race.
The other prospective candidates invariably issued statements praising Romney, even as they now circle about the 2012 nominee's donor base, looking to corral campaign cash.
The primary now is the money primary. I mean, one of the many big reasons why this Mitt Romney announcement is so important is that this frees up a lot of the establishment money that now may flow to the multiple governors because they're the establishment candidates.
With a year to go before the first-in-the-nation Iowa caucuses, seasoned GOP hands caution that the crowded field of candidates will likely both expand and contract. Poll numbers will fluctuate, and voters will be unlikely to pay close attention for some time to come.
This is not a race where the one that wins the most money raises the most money gets the nomination. This is a race that ultimately is going to be won on message, candidate skills, personality, and on organization in a lot of ways.
A former chairman of the Republican National Committee, Governor Barber, also repeated a plea to the candidates and to the conservative base that he made ardently to both of those groups in the last cycle, namely not to exalt purity over victory. Brett?
James, thank you. Well, how do you feel about Romney's decision? Let me know at facebook.com/BrettBairSR or on Twitter @BrettBair. Use the hashtag Special Report. We might use some comments later in the panel. The agonizing wait continues tonight for the families of two men held hostage by ISIS militants. ISIS is demanding the release of a convicted terrorist on Jordan's death row. Deadlines have already come and gone, with no new announced contact between the two sides. More negative reaction tonight to word that a former detainee at Guantanamo Bay is now back in contact with Middle Eastern terrorists. The dust-up over the Taliban 5. National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin has the story tonight from the Pentagon.
Pentagon officials defended the White House decision to trade 5 top Taliban leaders for Sergeant Bo Bergdahl a day after information emerged that one of the so-called Taliban 5 had reached out by telephone to Taliban contacts in Afghanistan. Defense officials said this does not constitute a return to the fight.
I would hasten to remind that it was because of the process we have in place and the strong relationship that we have with the government of Qatar that we were able to identify this particular activity, and I can assure you that steps are being taken to mitigate any activity in the future.
What I can say with confidence is this individual has not returned to the battlefield. This individual is not allowed to travel outside Qatar, and this individual has not engaged in any physical violence. In fact, this individual is still in Qatar right now.
The 5 detainees included the Taliban's Deputy Minister of Intelligence and an Interior Minister who had ties to Mullah Omar and Osama bin Laden.
In the past releases, there's approximately 30% of those who have returned to the fight, so it should be of no surprise that one or more of these 5 would return to the fight.
The Pentagon is also backing the White House's continued reluctance to refer to the Taliban as terrorists.
I don't think the White House said they're not terrorists. In fact, I think my colleague at the White House made it clear that they use terror tactics to some degree to exert their influence. They are not designated a foreign terrorist organization, and for purposes of U.S. the U.S. armed forces in Afghanistan. They're considered an armed insurgency.
The Qatari emir promised President Obama that his country would monitor the 5 former Gitmo detainees for a year. That year ends in May. After that, they are allowed to leave Qatar.
I think we have a mixed relationship with the government of Qatar. We have a major military base there, but Qatar is also the organization that helps to fund Hamas. And there were some indications that Qatar was also doing some early funding of ISIS.
Senator Lindsey Graham says the 5 released Gitmo detainees met a few months ago with representatives of the Taliban's Haqqani faction, which is designated a foreign terror organization by the State Department. Brett.
Jennifer Griffin live at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you. Up next, President Obama's upcoming budget, adding it all up. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 11 in Los Angeles with a murder arrest for former rap music mogul Suge Knight. He's accused of driving his pickup truck backward and forward over 2 men in a parking lot. One of them died. Knight is the founder of Death Row Records and has a long history of violent crimes. Fox 9 in the Twin Cities as a Delta Airlines flight from Minneapolis makes an emergency landing in Las Vegas after the pilot is locked out of the cockpit. The first officer was able to get the plane down safely. Delta says the door jammed. And this is a live look at Tampa from Fox 13. The big story there tonight, a custody battle brewing for Bart the zombie cat. Bart's owner says he found the cat curled up in a ball and apparently dead. He says he asked a friend to bury it, but the cat came back 5 days later. He took it into the Humane Society, and now they say he cannot have Bart back because of his home environment. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.